May the 27th, 2026. Guys, you're looking at the updated Bureau of Reclamation time chart here, and now they're starting to match what you and I have been looking at very closely, and now they're scaling back quickly. And they had a little weekend break starting on the 25th, and the data was late coming in. We still do not have all of it. But this is in, guys, and this came out yesterday on the 26th. See that created. And guys, they now know that in just a few days, we're going to hit the 1050 below mark. And that's going to bring in tier 2 restrictions. And what will happen is if the different states involved, Nevada, Arizona, California, if they can't come to some quick agreement on this allocation with the dropping water levels, we're going to see the feds take over. They'll shut down any state's ability to argue about it. They'll put strict watering monitoring on it. It will lead to chaos because you're in a major planting season in the California valleys where they get a lot of the water from me. I think they were the highest allocated. But when tier 2 hits, things are going to change, and they're going to change quickly. Now, let me tell you what I see as a possibility of happening. You're going to have, we talked about migration. And when you don't, it will be both east and south, because when you don't have the crops in California, you'll see a lot of migration going back into Mexico, more than likely simply to make a living. But this chart, guys, has expedited the time. They are started to looking at it. I'm sure it didn't have anything to do with our video, but now they're looking at it very close. Again, the 25th, they went on the Memorial Day break, and I think they're keeping a very close eye on this right now. Now, here's what we're dealing with. Today is May the 27th. So right here, it's a 1051.07. It's a foot 0.07 above the 1050 point where tier 2 steps in. But we're going to see, guys, as you see the migration, the water wars in a way, all the states have already put millions of dollars in a treasure chest for legal battles for this, guys. They have lawyered up to the max. And actually, they're going to be throwing all that money away, because no matter how much money you got, you can't make it rain, not with a situation like it is now. Anyway, today is the 27th. You see that right there, 1051. Let me pull this up a little, guys. May 27th, 1051.07. That's this dot right here. Now let me back it back out just a little. On the night of May the 31st, you see just a little bit of dive right there, a little sharper bend. Well, when we wake up on June the 1st, we're going to be past that line now. I gave it 10 days. Now it's more like from that point, not quite 8. But again, May 31st, overnight, it's going to go from 1050.21 they're expecting to 1049. So we're going to drop below 1051 today. See that? Let me back this up right there. 1051. Tomorrow will be 1050, 88, 85, and it's just going to drop from there. So we've got, if you don't count today, 1, 2, 3, 4 days, and then into that night of May 31st, the drop in the government mandate of tier 2 restricting water restrictions, guys, comes into effect. This will lead to conflicts, not just legal conflicts, but you're going to start seeing protests. People, we can't get the water. You'll see it much quicker than you're going to see places like Lake Tahoe that's going to lose their power in a year because of Nevada Energy sending it to the data centers. This is going to be starting very quickly. If they can't come up with something real fast, and again, money cannot buy rain, then it's trouble. So it looks like we're going to be dealing with chaos. Government steps in, they're going to control every spigot to all the big farms, everything. People protest, National Guard's called in to control thirst riots, if you understand what I'm saying. And when you don't have the water to grow the food, it becomes hunger. But that's the next phase. But what we're going to see again is complaints, a lot of millions worth of dollars worth of money, guys, thrown at lawyers for nothing because they may delay something a day or two. You're not going to stop Mother Nature. I'll show you why. So, let me just go to the end of their prediction here, June 3rd, guys, and today's the 27th, 1049.50. We're already halfway to 1048. See that? Again, we got the V bottom, we got the temperatures heating up, and we talked about the different spigots that are at Lake Mead. You got 3 basically, and one's down around, 950. We'll take a look at that map. But something else they're not talking about, we are going to do it right now. Now let's take a look at this. Lake Mead, it's at the top here, guys, would be 1080. Now we're down almost 1050 now here, right? Intake 1 will be partially out of the water, and you can see that it already is from some of the boaters in the Vegas area going over and doing these videos. And because you're going to be pulling air and you're going to create cavitation and you will destroy the big props and the big blades on these turbines. So they'll switch to intake 2, and then the red one is intake 3, and it is 860 foot above sea level. So you're talking about almost 190 feet from 1050 to here. Now, one of the things that they have not put into the calculation of the maps is that we have 100 foot of mud and sand and silt build up from the bottom of Lake Mead. So there's 100 foot less water in this V bottom. You understand what I'm saying? Now, supposedly, and I looked at the technical data on when they built this intake 3, it was really a master move as far as engineering. Whether it's going to help this situation or not, I don't know, because what'll happen is it's 860 above the sea level, excuse me. Now, normally you got about 200 or 300 foot below this level, but with that 100 foot of silt in there, it probably puts it a little over 200 foot. So what happens, now only Vegas will get any intake from this pot, this third straw. But what will happen, it could start pulling in some of this silt because, guys, it's going to be under tremendous pressure. And if you start vortexing in that silt bed, you'll be pulling a lot into intake 3 at that point. Now, I know, and I looked at the data on it, is that Vegas, when they pour water into intake 3, it doesn't go straight into their municipal water supply. It runs through another company that heavily filtrates it. So that will help some if it does not mess up the pumps, the silt here. But the other factor is, again, you've got 100 foot less of water in depth, guys, than they are telling us. And that's because you've got a mud barrier 100 feet up, a silt and all. Now, one of the things about intake 3 that it was an engineering example of mass construction is the fact that they were smart enough to put this intake 3 section over a place that has heavy current. In other words, the area behind the dam and then right when you start into the lake has the heaviest silt buildup. But the engineers looked at where some of the shallower areas are and where you had good current, maybe coming directly from the initial riverbed, that was keeping some of that silt out of that area where straw 3 is. Again, it's a temporary reprieve, but Vegas was ahead of the game on that. Now, they don't rely on much of Mead's power, or for their power. They use Nevada Electric, I think, and some places like that, just so wouldn't be doubly hit from losing power at Mead and water at the same time. Now, I want to show you something that I mentioned in another video, and we're going back a year to date from today's date. And you're seeing at 20 miles high, the jet stream, very powerful, and it's moving basically from right to left, and it pushes back on El Nino, and it pushes moisture from the Gulf of Mexico up and through Texas and Mexico itself, or the Gulf of America now, and into the desert region. Let's look at it closely again. This is what happens. It's like eddies on the side of a river, if you've ever watched that happen. And so as it comes through here, the moisture's pulled up. This is again 1 year to date. Look at this through the Rocky Mountains everywhere. But let's go to today, and you're going to see something that's amazing because the entire upper level jet stream has suddenly collapsed. And this is today, guys. Nothing is like it was last year. Complete collapse at 20 miles high. Now you're still seeing some moisture being pushed in here, guys. Nothing like it was. And let me show you how you can tell the difference. Let's look at the total amount of precipitable water, TPW. Now going back to 2025, a year ago, guys, this is the, again, jet stream pattern we're seeing. This is precipitable water. Blue, green, purple. Brown is very dry, very arid. Again, last year, we were seeing some moisture being pushed in, and the dry areas here along the Rio Grande, guys, down through this area right there is kind of the layer that we're seeing. That hasn't changed that much, but look at what's happening. Again, watch this conveyor belt. We're going to come back to today's date. Totally different. It's completely out of whack. The moisture really has no direction. The jet stream is broken down, and it's setting up for a very dry summer again. And it looks like the way that it is going to do is set up a permanent high pressure zone over the Southwest, up really almost to Canada throughout the summer. And if that happens, guys, you're talking about some people are, looking forward to the El Nino monsoon season. That may not happen at all. And when you look at where the Colorado River gets its water from, which is snowfall, that really puts a big dent in it. But this is just the physical evidence of Mother Nature rebalancing itself to protect itself. And they're saying, guys, that this data from the earthnullschool.net, that's what we're looking at. It's a link on bpearthwatch.com, reveals a catastrophic structural split of the 10 HP polar vortex. That's the 20-mile height, making a severe upper atmosphere collapse of the polar vortex compared to 2025. This buckling of stratospheric winds has resulted in a massive, stagnant, high-pressure heat dome over the western United States, effectively blocking moisture and driving regional drought conditions. The collapse directly contributes to a winter snow drought in the Rockies and a reduced inflows from the Colorado River system. Again, this is from the information today. And what they're saying about the 2025 level, how different it is, there was showing that the high altitude stratospheric winds over the Pacific and the Southwest show a distinct organized pattern. You saw how everything was flowing smoothly, right? The circulation was positioned in a way that allowed traditional low-pressure troughs to regularly drop down the west coast, pushing deep Pacific moisture directly into the Rocky Mountains. Again, that's where the snow is. That atmospheric alignment is what generated the mountain snowpack that kept the Colorado River flowing and temporarily propped up Lake Mead. And you remember, was it 2022, 2023, right in there where we started seeing Mead really drop? And then we got these monsoons come in for a couple of years and bring Mead back up, and people turn, they just forgot about it, basically, even the people in Vegas. But again, this is how it's supposed to be. You saw what's happening. It says when you go back to today, it says the stratosphere has undergone a massive, chaotic realignment. The wind vectors are have completely shattered the old pattern. A monumental, immovable ridge of high pressure has anchored itself directly over the western edge of the continent, guys. It was originally a desert. It's always been a desert, and it's going to win this war very quickly. It says this high-altitude stratospheric wall acts like a massive boulder dropped into a small stream. It is physically deflecting the entire jet stream and pushing all precipitable moisture, that's what we were looking at, completely up into northern Canada or shoving it far east towards the Atlantic. Beneath that 20-mile stratospheric block, the air over the Southwest is forced to continuously sink, compress, and bake It completely seals off the basin from any hope of rainfall or snowpack replenishment. And guys, what I see is Mother Nature taking back control of an area that was never meant for big cities. But it's going to be a devastating loss, and it's coming pretty quickly. Again, you're going to see the Tier 2 stuff come in Monday morning. You'll see the newspapers, more than likely, unless they're paid a hell of a lot of money to not mention it, you're going to start seeing headlines about it. You're going to start seeing the legal battles. You're going to see the spigots get cut off and guarded by the military. Do you know what that leads to? Do you know when you get people standing in food and water lines, they're the easiest population on the planet to control? I hope you realize that. It goes on and says, this is a rare atmospheric event, a major sudden stratospheric warming called an SSW, that has completely split and collapsed the polar vortex early in the year. By tracking how the 20-mile high collapse ripples down the surface, we can see exactly how nature has locked this heat wave into place for the rest of the summer. It creates an atmospheric chokehold that cannot be broken. Guys, we had that high pressure over here in Mississippi, about 3 years ago? And it was terrible. But guys, if you look at the aquifer levels even here in our state, in Mississippi, they're in bad shape too. Almost just as bad, except we're not a desert. And it says when these 20-mile high altitude winds shatter and reverse, the massive thermal energy from the stratospheric collapse doesn't stay up in space. Over a period of 14 to 30 days, that high altitude disruption forces its way downward through the atmosphere like a slow moving hydraulic press. High pressure shuts off all moisture. It absorbs it all. And guys, right now at the rate that Powell is cut back sending to Meade, that 8,000 cubic feet per second is almost being completely evaporated. You got 260 something miles, I think, between Powell and Meade, and it goes through the hottest area of the Colorado River, the Grand Canyon. And down there, guys, it bakes. So by the time they get down, doing the math, on the water getting from, again, Powell, 200 something miles downstream to Meade, most of what they had let out is evaporated. And for years until this year, they never put in the evaporation factor, even going back many years ago when they started distributing the water. They did it in a very wet, rainy season, and they never accounted for this evaporation. But just on the 25th of this month, May, they started changing things up just a little bit. Now, if it goes into Tier 2, just coming up in a few days, that will be a factor, a major factor, because that will determine what future allocations people get. Now, the hardest hit will be Southern California, because you've got, what is that long canal, guys, that goes forever through there, and, it's water for the fields and the crops and everything else. But because of its long run and its exposure to the heat, it has the highest evaporation rate of any of the other systems. Again, coming from Meade, coming through from the Colorado River. And so they're going to initially feel the largest cutback because of the new evaporation factor that's being forced into place. So here again, you're going to have migration from the fields. You're going to see the crops get damaged. And you're going to see water wars after the legal wars, and you're going to see the federal government start rationing. And it's going to happen quicker than you think. And they're concerned about this collapse of the jet stream, guys. It's called a high amplitude omega block directly over the west coast. It's called and they're calling it the birth of a permanent heat dome. The Evan effect, the block creates a massive localized dome of high pressure. As air sinks beneath the dome, it compresses. In thermodynamics, compressing air rapidly increases its temperature. The no-escape zone is this dome acts like a giant glass lid over a baking dish. It completely repels any cool marine air from the Pacific and blocks all subtropical moisture. The desert sun bakes the cloudless canyon walls of Lake Mead day after day, maximizing the canyon radiator effect. Now, what that is, guys, is you've got rocks. It's a rock canyon, right? All through the system. And how you know how hot they get during the day and how that heat transfers down to the water line and below that, increasing evaporation. Again, they have now changed this from a drought situation to what's called aridification. It's turning back into a desert. And you saw, again, the jet stream died and everything just kind of lazy, just basically vortexing around down there and not doing a whole lot of anything. It says because the temperature contrast between the equator and the wrecked polar vortex is flatlined, the jet stream has lost its velocity. It is now stuck in a lazy, looping, permanent crawl. This means the scorching high-pressure block is structurally anchored. It will not move, warp, or crack. It will set directly over the Colorado River Basin, acting as a permanent moisture vacuum for the next 3 to 4 months. Guys, that's going to easily put us below 1035 very quickly. There goes into a complete different disaster. But again, when Tier 2 goes in and the federal government is forced to step in because you're going to see people cheating the system. Nobody's going to know we open up this big pipe and irrigate this field or whatever database or whatever. And of course, they will be the last ones the feds look at. But because I think, if I'm not mistaken, they have now classified data centers as military priorities because they can be used and very quickly to decipher battlefield information or whatever, right? So now they've got that protection of military, not property, but basically it is, but it's a priority to the military, and so it will be protected from anything as far as cutoffs. But you're going to see those cutoffs start. Military come in again, and from then it's downhill because you can bring in all the lawyers, all the military, all you want, but when you got a 3 or 4 month high pressure dome sitting over the desert, it's not going to help. You can't make it rain with the military. They can't do that. Now, the information we got in this morning is Meade is still taking in about 8,000 feet of water, and that's what Powell is letting out, but that evaporation factor is critical. And Lake Meade has been forced to double its output in the last few days, dropping even faster. Now, this is a 14-day timeline, but what we're looking at right now at 0.29 feet per day, guys, that's a 4.6 vertical drop in 14 days. You understand? Now, that'll change if they slow down the output rate, but see, they're under legal restrictions. If a downstream demand pops up, like suddenly Phoenix is watering everything they've got planted and all through that area, then Meade is forced to open up. It's down. So again, all of that's going to change at Tier 2. Then when you talk about 4.6 vertical feet in 14 days, this is how it works out, guys. That would be in 14 days, 1047. The day-by-day projection shows the exact path of the reservoir as it burns through the last of its 1050-foot safety buffer. May 28th, guys, that's tomorrow. Let me pull this down. Oh, too far. May 28th, 1051. May 29th, 1050. May 30th, 1050-49. See that? May 31st, 1050-20. June 1st, 1049. That's the official 1050-foot breach, and that's where the Tier 2 trigger date is. June the 2nd, 1049. Just look at the drop. Now, and guys, by June 10th, this thing has nearly dropped 3 feet, 4730. That's not long at all, 2 weeks. There's no way this thing's going to hold up to next year to hit 1035. You got a V bottom, decreasing water acreage. You got the heat building up. And like when you hit 100, guys, the first day of it, the evaporation is not as intense, but you go overnight with that heat. And into the second day, the evaporation starts to accelerate very quickly, guys, adding in, again, no moisture upstream, high pressure setting over it, and the heat. So again, June 10th, only 14 days away, guys, 10,047.3 feet. The volume of evaporation over these 14 days alone, the combination of the 14,400 CFS outflow, that's what I'm saying, they not quite doubled their outflow overnight downstream towards Phoenix, the Phoenix area, guys, from Meade by law. It says the outflow in the stratospheric heat dome will erase a roughly 260,000 acre-feet of physical water volume, guys, 14 days. The drop pushes Lake Meade's storage capacity down to 25.5%, placing the reservoir squarely into the bottom 10th percentile of its entire recorded history for the month of June. At 1047, the water column is now 297 vertical feet above the 100-foot mud floor at the base of the dam. So that means you only have 197 feet of water. The dropping weight of the upper water column increases the risk of drawing bottom sediment upward into the lower irrigation pipes. That's what I was saying. That pressure from those huge pipes, guys, could create vortices in the sand and silt. And even though Vegas runs their water through a big filtering company before it hits their main supply, it's got to get through, that silt and all has to get through the pumps to get to that company. Now, you got to start of summer, June 1st, start of hurricane season, which with the way the jet stream is not moving from east to west, we may not get many hurricanes this year, just like we have in the last few years, which increases the Gulf water temperature and the Atlantic water temperatures. It says the summer officially kicks off next week. The reservoir will enter its most volatile season stretch with its historical margins entirely wiped out. Now, let's go back to 2007 in just a moment. Under the official 2007 Colorado River interim guidelines, breaking below the 1050-foot threshold legally strips the states of their voluntary management rights and hands absolute unilateral authority to the federal government. The specific legal mechanisms within the guidelines dictate an immediate federal takeover of the river's plumbing. Section 2D1 is what they call it. It says the guidelines state that if the elevation of Meade is projected to be at or below 1050, the Secretary of the Interior must immediately declare a shortage condition for the upcoming operating year. Of course they will, guys, but it's going to be a lot worse than that in the upcoming year. But here's where the government starts its takeover. Now, there will be no negotiations. It is not a request or a negotiation. The guidelines contain strict, pre-calculated legal tables. Now, you know, guys, during this last weekend, Memorial Day, a lot of people were in back rooms knowing what these numbers are and knowing what's coming. And they're putting people in the place to handle it. The second the 1050-foot line is crossed, the federal government legally voids the standard water delivery contracts for Arizona, Nevada, and Mexico, automatically forcing the mandatory water cuts into effect. Now, you notice here they have not mentioned California yet. It's an unilateral secretarial authority. This is the ultimate legal override clause. Section 7A grants the Secretary of the Interior the explicit right to unilaterally modify water release schedules from both Lake Powell and Lake Meade to protect the structural integrity of the dams and the municipal power grids. You cannot legally override Mother Nature. They are grasping at straws. They're trying to keep their empire going as long as they can. And you're also going to see more days of delay in getting the actual numbers from the drops at the lakes, more than likely. Now, moving up to 2019, they developed the Drought Contingency Plan, a DCP overlap. Again, it's not a drought now. They're calling it an aerification. 7000 guidelines were reinforced by the 2019 Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan, which added an extra layer of legal teeth into this 1050-foot mark. That's why we've been watching it so close. Under the DCP, or the Drought Contingency Plan, once the lake falls under the 1045 to 1050-foot ban, the federal government is legally required to implement the Section 2B intervention protocols. This mandates that the Bureau of Reclamation must immediately step in and take direct control of the water count balances for major irrigation districts, ensuring that no state can legally withdraw a single drop of water beyond their strict emergency limits. And so Monday, June 1st, this is going to stop being an interstate management issue. It becomes a direct federal operation. The Bureau of Reclamation will hold the legal keys to the valve, setting up the exact Supreme Court battle we broke down earlier. And that's what, again, the legal wars. But guys, no court, no judge can make it rain. They're going to throw millions away. They're putting $52 million into Lake Mead's, one of their turbines are down. They want to rebuild it, pull it. $52 million, and it won't be done in time for there nothing to be left but a mud bed with a creek pouring through it, through the lower drains of Lake Mead's Dam Hoover. That's what it will be, a big mud bed by the time they even get close to using that $52 million or getting that work done with that money. Now, what will happen to the $52 million that's been allocated? I don't know. They may build a big power grid for a data center or something. Seems like that's where their head is now. Now, when Monday gets here, you're going to start seeing these outflow reductions. How many cubic feet per second the federal engineers physically force through the 14,400 cubic feet discharge? They're talking about Mead here to stabilize the lake. Guys, that discharge is anti-destabilizing the lake. Again, it went from about 8,000 to 14.4, or 8,000 to 14.4 downstream. But that's because of the existing regulations that end Monday. So the specific enforcement language used to choke back the Central Arizona Project canals and the California's desert irrigation pipelines. That's going to be outgone. It will not be state allocated any longer. And when you look at the upstream adjustments from Lake Powell, federal control now. Well, so what's been happening with Lake Powell, they have stopped their output to just about match their input for now, and at 8,000 cubic feet. And so that's because that state has the right to do that. But that right will be over. So will we see the Fed step in and release more water downstream, which will quicken the entire disaster? Or will they clamp down and save it and pull a Nevada power deal like they're doing with the 49,000 residents in Lake Tahoe? You got 1 year to find new power because the data centers have outbid you, even though we've raised your power rates at Lake Tahoe year after year after year. Now we're turning our backs on you. But what they don't realize at Nevada Electric, they will run into these same conditions very quickly. When you're under a drought through the entire West, and we see the jet stream breaking down, and it's already been, nature has actually been already taking it back for several years now, then all they can do is watch it collapse, basically, because they have no other choice. And the desert will reclaim itself. The cities will dwindle down. And it will be just enough people there for that amount of water the way it was supposed to be when it all started. In nature, again, they wanted to go up and say, we have defeated Mother Nature. Look at this dam, the Great Hoover Dam. We have infinite water and power. Mother Nature changed that because the desert is not made for that. And this one thing about the high pressure, if you live in the South right now, we've been getting rain for a couple of weeks. I'm still not going to complain. It's muddy as crap, soggy, all of that. But compared to 110-degree heat that we've seen this time of the year, thank you, Father, for the rain. We'll keep bringing it, especially when we look west, guys. And guys, for nearly a century, the entire economy of the Southwest was built on a legal fiction. The 1922 Colorado River Compact, cities like Phoenix, and agricultural empires like the Imperial Valley were constructed around the absolute certainty that the water would always flow if the paperwork was in order. Now watching the automated data feeds freeze, websites drop into sterile layouts. That's what we're seeing, guys, even with the Lake Powell and Lake Mead water databases in the last 24 hours. Believe me. Now watching this data feed freeze, websites drop, lake plunge 2.9 feet in a single day, exposes that the people in charge have completely lost control. The paper rules are vaporizing in the desert heat. That pretty much sums it up, because again, 100 years they thought they could defeat Mother Nature and change the landscape. They were big and powerful, and money always wins. It's going to cost them every cent they got, plus, before this is all said and done. And when the resources, guys, as fundamental as water or electricity collapse on a regional scale, the threat of civil unrest, martial law, and expanded federal control becomes a very real part of the historical playbook. Look at the history. History shows that governments frequently utilize severe crisis to implement sweeping emergency powers that would otherwise be rejected in normal times. If the Colorado River system hits a total breakdown, the path for resource depletion to direct military intervention follows a predictable sequence of operational control. Now, guys, part of this collapse will not just be because of government control at first. The supply chain will start to collapse. When you cut off the agricultural sector, and guys, it seems like half the world's lettuce comes from California, things like that, a lot of things, right? But when they can't water it, all that dies. So you have the trigger of the food shortages, skyrocketing prices, and riots at the grocery stores. If the extreme heat dome conditions overlap with rolling grid blackouts because Hoover Dam or regional gas plants fail, major desert metropolitan zones will lose air conditioning, municipal water pumps, and fuel station power simultaneously. You'll be trapped. And guys, when you're dealing with heat, no water, no electricity, empty grocery shelves, civil order degrades and becomes desperate. Localized riots can raise up within 48 to 72 hours. When local law enforcement is overwhelmed by resource-driven unrest, the federal government will systematically execute pre-planned emergency protocols. That's what we're talking about. What was going on in the back rooms over the last holiday. Governors will initially activate the National Guard under Title 32 to enforce strict curfews, guard critical water filtration plants, protect data center grids, and secure food distribution hubs. Again, the data center grids are in line before the food hubs. Martial law and the Excelleration Act. We've talked about that. Trump has talked about it. We thought that it would probably come from people revolting against the ICE situation or whatever. It may come from a completely different angle, from Mother Nature. If the unrest crosses state lines or threatens vital federal infrastructure, again, that vital federal infrastructure now includes the data centers. The president can invoke the Insurrection Act. This allows active duty military forces to take over local law enforcement duties, establish military checkpoints, and ration fuel and water supplies by force. And guys, if you were going to centralize power, like a centralized bureaucracy, a crisis of this magnitude presents a massive opportunity to permanently solidify control over the population. Total resource dictatorship. Under emergency declarations, the federal government can completely federalize all remaining water rights, groundwater aquifers, and energy grids, Private property rights and state compacts are permanently dissolved in the name of national security. Private property rights. We're seeing people already being dislocated because they want to run a new data center there, the power lines to the data center. And by controlling the checkpoints, the water distribution trucks, and the power grid allocations, the government becomes the sole provider of survival resources. A population completely dependent on the state for daily water and rations is a population that can easily be managed, like I said before, managed, monitored, and controlled. Is that the end game? Well, if it is, guys, our Father has a little surprise for them, because no military can operate under these conditions for very long anyway. You run out of water and power, it's migration time. There will be military problems there, but you're going to see mass migration if you're allowed enough fuel to leave. Now, this chart's a little hard to read. Let me make it just a little larger. Now, this is made for 14 days, guys, ending yesterday. We'll have today's information tomorrow. 5123. And again, what has happened is this change had slowed down, 0.06, 0.08, then yesterday 0.15, last night 0.29, guys, because of this right here. Let me move this over. The inflows, which come from Powell, have been around 8,000, 805, 775. It's dropping. Average is 7909. But the outflow, look, on the 2 days that we were getting a very low drop, 0.06, 0.08, we were only outflow, or Meade was only outflowing 9610. See that? It got that phone call down there to Data Centerville, 1360 day before yesterday, 1440 yesterday. That's cubic feet per second. So suddenly from 6.8 to 15 and 0.29. And so if they're going to continue this allocation of 14,400 out downstream, this number is going to stay the same or increase into 30 and 0.40 range, which will, it may not change how soon we get to 1050, but it will change how quickly we get to that 1035 number. And that could be about 60 days if it stays like this. 60 days only because of the prop up from Powell. If Powell decreases any of this flow, which again, it's not that much, but it is decreasing. You got 8183, 8109, 8045, 8005, and dropping 775 on the last count. So if that holds together and they can alleviate or they can slow down this outflow, we may get about a 50 to 60 day window, for the 1035 level, where it really doubles down into a tier 3 situation. But tier 2, again, you're bringing in the feds starting Monday. And I'd like to hear your comments, guys, on about what you think the newspapers will say Monday. Maybe they'll wait till Tuesday. Who knows? Depends on how much money they will take to keep their mouth shut, to keep the panic down. But they're going to start to change Monday. It will drift from the Texas election like we're seeing now and the war into the battle of the Southwest. We're watching it, guys. You watch it. God bless every one of you. It's a heads up. Be very safe.